Hey everyone. In this week's video, I have two things that I want to show. And if everything goes to plan, this should actually be a pretty short video. Not because they're insignificant or anything, just because I've made some improvements that I think make Cortex easier to use. And so there's really not a whole lot to show, but because of that, they're pretty powerful features. But before we get to that, I'd want to remind everyone that every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I host the Cortex Users Group. This is an opportunity for all of you, regardless of whether you're using Cortex, thinking about using Cortex, curious about Cortex, to come to a virtual meeting. It's Zoom, and ask me questions, ask other people questions, um, and just generally talk about how Cortex is working for you and various things you're doing with it. This is kind of step one in my plan to build up a users group for what will be coming in the future, building on top of Cortex, building on top of some of the line of business applications that you've built in the past on Cherwell. And that's a bit of a teaser to some videos that will be coming uh, soon, certainly by the end of the year, and definitely the beginning of 2025. But I might start putting some other teaser videos out here and there. So Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, you're more than welcome to join us for the Cortex users group. There's a link in the video description to get an invite to that. And again, you're welcome to show up, ask any questions, and talk to your peers. So with that, let's talk about external connections. So last week, I demoed this external connections screen and this table that lists the external connections that are configured in your Cherwell system. In my particular Cherwell system, I only have one. It's a loopback connection, so basically connects to the same database that Cherwell has all of its data in. This is useful to get back to things like the trebuchet deaths table or the security groups table, that sort of thing. Now in Cherwell, you had to configure this as if it were any other external connection. So regardless of whether you're connecting back to Cherwell or connecting to a completely different SQL server, you had to configure an external connection the same way, which meant that if you go to edit it, you have a bunch of information that you have to provide. Again, even if you're connecting back to the same database that Cherwell has all of its data in. Uh, However, this loopback connection is a common paradigm, common pattern in most of your Cherwell configurations. So I felt like it was easier just to add a checkbox. It made a lot more sense just to add a checkbox. And to be honest, I'm not sure why Cherwell didn't add this checkbox as well. I do know that later on they were trying to discourage people from uh, creating these loopback connections. But to be honest, there were some things that you could, the only way to do them was through this loopback connection. So in Cortex, rather than having to hunt down the information for how to connect to your loopback connection, there's a checkbox. And that's all you have to do. You can save. And now if I go back to browse and find my Cherwell security group object, it's configured. It shows me all the records, and I didn't have to plug in SQL username, password, anything like that. It uses the exact same connection that Cortex is using for literally every other business object. So that's thing number one for today's video. Thing number two is let's go to an incident and let's just drill into a particular incident. Uh, so if you go and look at the URL, which I apologize if that's tiny. It's slash browse slash incident slash the rec ID of the incident. I'm not going to say every single number and letter in the rec ID, which, okay, that's fine. You can use that as a deep link. That link is stable, so you can, for instance, copy that URL. Um, I'm using Arc, so I actually have a copy URL button, but you could copy that URL and paste that into your new system if you want to refer to an older incident. Um, that's great. That definitely works. But what if you already know, say, the incident number? Well, you can do that too. So I'm going to go back to browse. I'm going to go to incident and I'm going to pick, let's say, 100579. So what I can do is do browse slash incident and then that incident ID 100579. And I'll hit enter. And of course, it'll ask me to log in because I've been talking long enough that I need to log in again. And it'll bring me right to that. Well, in this case, it's a service request, but right to that record, 100579, which means you can use the public ID of pretty much any record. Any business object that has a public ID, you can use it in that same way. The format for the URL is slash browse slash name of business object slash public ID value. So for incident, it's typically the incident ID, the incident number. For something like customer, it works as well. So if you wanted to get to John, you would do slash browse slash customer slash John space Allard. There you go. Goes right to that employee. Uh, and again, any business object that has a public ID configured. Um, it does get kind of interesting. I've seen strange configurations with some supporting business objects and some lookup tables potentially. But this definitely works if you have the public ID configured in a way that makes sense. Um, Ideally, something that's unique. If it's not a unique value, it's just going to pick the first one. You might get weird results. Um, so incident, typically that's the incident ID. Employee, that's probably the employee name, but you have to be careful if you have two people with the same name. Uh, and then any other business object you have that configured for. Change request, it might be the change ID. Um, Agreement, there might be a public ID and agreement ID. I don't remember what uh, the out of the box content has. But in any event, if you have a public ID or a public ID configured for the business object, you can use that pattern for the URL slash browse slash name of business object slash public ID, as opposed to the name of the business object and then the rec ID. The rec ID still works, and that's actually what shows up in the URL if you're just navigating around, um, because that is guaranteed to be unique. Um, but if you know the public ID, you can use that in a URL as well. So hopefully that's helpful. That was a customer requested feature. So I know at least one customer will benefit from that. Uh, if you benefit from this as well, let me know in the comments. Um, and if you're interested in seeing other features that you would find useful, there's also a link down below to submit feedback. I think it's cortex.canny.io, but there's a link down in the description where you can submit feature requests, um, other ideas for consideration, that sort of thing. If lots of people uh, upvote the same ideas, then that brings them to the top, and I'm more likely to work on them. Um, Most of what I'm working on now is requested by you all, either through that Canny link, or in some cases, it's just conversations with people. Though I do try to add the items to Canny as much as possible. Um, or bugs that are reported. If you do run into a bug, just send that directly to me. At least for right now, the way to report that is sending it directly to me, um, because I want to make sure those get worked on sooner rather than later. The new features tend to fall below bug fixes in the order of priority. Uh, but also, if you want to see Cortex running on your systems, there's links down below to make that happen, documentation, that sort of thing, a way to book time on my calendar. I'm more than happy to help you get it running on your system so you can try it out and see how it works for you. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below or shoot me an email, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.